read all numbers in English. Can you answer me? How can you read this big number? This big number, this is a number. How can you pronounce? How can you even read this mega number? And what about the decimals? Decimals with point. How can you read this? What is your method to read all the big numbers? Decimals, ordinals, first, second, third, fourth. And what about the fractions? What about the fractions? How can you pronounce and how can you read all these fractions in English? Dates and years. How would you read dates and years in English language? How can you tell the address in English? What about, and the most important thing is, how can you deliver? How can you read the phone numbers in English? Because these are all confusing numbers, and if we want to speak English fluently, we should be fluent in numbers also. In confusing numbers, big numbers, decimals, ordinal numbers, fractions, addresses, dates and years, and lot more. So this video is going to be very important. Stay tuned till the end of the video. So you are eager? Yes, you are eager to know about how to read all the big numbers in a stretch. So stay tuned till the end of the video, and we are going to start with the big numbers. Yes, and after this lesson you will say, this is not the big number to read, I can read it easily. Big numbers. I am going to give you the trick to understand and to read these big numbers. And what is the trick? And what is the trick? The trick is here. Here are some gaps. 1 gap, 2 gap, and 3 gap. Here are only 2 gaps. Here are only 2 gaps. Now you have to fill these gaps, because you understand 1. It is 1. It is 234. I am going to give you a detail. 234. You understand this? 34. What is this? 500. 565. Very good. 67. Last one. 800. 890. Now the trick is here. Now you have to understand, you can understand this, that this is 1, this is 234, 567, 890. Now the trick is, if there are 3 gaps, the first gap is billion, second gap is million, the third gap is thousand. You only have to place 1 billion, 234, 37 are 237 million. You have to only place these, and after this figure 567,000, 800, and the last 100. After that you should place and 890. How easy it is. How easy it is. If there are 3 gaps, 1 gap billion, the second gap million, the third gap thousand. We are going to repeat the second example. Now there are only 2 gaps. If there are only 2 gaps between the words, if there are only 2 gaps, you have to understand first, you have to write down. First is 98. 90. The first is 98. The second is 700. 765. 65. Third one is 400. 432. 432. Now there are 2 gaps. You can easily understand this. 98, 765, 432. Now there are two gaps. If there are two gaps, the first gap will be of million. First gap, if there are two gaps, then first would be of million, the second would be of thousand. So after 98 you have to place million, 98 million 765,000, and after last 100 you have to place and. How easy it is, how easy it is. If there are three gaps, one is billion, second is million, and the third one is thousand. Again we have to read it. We have just to understand how would you pronounce it, how would you read it. 75. Now 0 0 0 75. Now you have to understand there are two gaps. The first gap is of million. If there are two gaps, first gap is of million, second gap is of thousand. Now you have to understand that there are zeros and zeros. We don't understand, we don't pronounce, we only would say 75 million. 75 million. You can also say 7.5 million. You can also say 7.5 million, but you can only say it's 8.5 billion. You can only say it with billions and millions. With billions and millions, 6.5 billion. 6.5 billion. If it is the condition, if there are only two figures, you can say 7.5 million, 7.5 billion. Here is the trick. If there are three gaps, one gap is billion, second gap is million, third gap is thousand. If there are two gaps, one gap is million, the second gap is of thousand. And the final 100 we should place and after the final 100. How easy it is. Now there will be a quiz at the end of the video and you have to score maximum, and let me know in the comment section how much score you have scored in the quiz test. So we are going forward towards the next adventure, and the next adventure is about decibels, about fractions, dates and years and much more. What is decimal? Decibel means point. Here is decimal. Decimal is this point. It is a number with period in it. Now how would you point or how would you read this decimal? This decimal, there are two ways, one for money and one for percentages. How would you pronounce it? I am going to tell you. For example, 16 in percentages you would say 16.75. 16.75. In percentages you would say this decimal as point, 16.75, but for money you would say and for this period. For example, 16 and $75. 16 and. For money you would say and for this point, and for percentages you would say point to read decimals. What about fractions? Very important use. Fractions. This is half. This is 1/4. This is 1/4. And what about this? 3/4. This is 3/4. You could also say 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. 1 out of 4. 1 out of 2. Half, quarter, 3/4, 1/5. 1/5. You would say 1/5. And you can also say 1 out of 5. 1/10. 1/10. You could also say 1 out of 10th. 1 in of 10th. 1 out of 5th. The best way and the easiest way is you can say 1 out of, 3 out of, 2 out of 4th. So this is the rule to say and to read fraction. We use ordinal numbers for days, and for sports. So ordinal numbers are, it's a number within an order. How to read this? First, for example, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, not fifth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, again twist, 12th, again 13, again 14, 15th, 16th, 17th, likewise. And now 20th, again we are repeating, again 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27, and so on. And next 30th, and we would say 31st, 32nd, 33rd, 34th, 35th, 36th, 37th, again, and 40th, and we would say 40th, and again 41st, 42nd, 43rd, 44th, 45th, 46th, 47th, and again 50th, and in this way this ordinal goes on. Very important usage is to read these dates and years. Ordinal numbers in the usage of dates. How would you read this date, month, and years? Very important usage is that you have to understand ordinal numbers. For example, first you have to understand and you have to read December, the month. Next, December 12th. Now you have to separate the year into two parts, first two and second two. It means 2024, not 2024. It's also right, but the correct method is 2024. You can also say 2024. T is silent, 2024. Next, how would you read this? First, you have to mention the month, January. Second, ordinal number, January 1st, 2002. You have to mention this 02. You can say 2002. Next, how would you say this? First month is March, date is 3rd. Next, 2000. The last one, the last attempt. How would you say this? First the month, September, again date 22nd. Separate the year into two parts, 2012. Addresses follow the same rule as years. For example, we have to separate these into two parts, first two and last two. For example, 1290 Main Street. Again, separate it into two parts like the years. 523 Elf Eve. Separate it into two parts and then read 1290 523. Same rule as the years. How to read the phone numbers? The most important thing is that when you have to understand, when you have to read area code, you have to read them separate. For example, 825 area code. Next number you should separate them like the years into two parts. For example, 3298 area code 825 3298. Next, area code 347 855. Next, you have to divide them into two parts, 70 30. Again, another example. How would you read this? First is country code first, area code 808 420, and again separate them into two parts, 22 40. Now we are moving towards our question session, and you have to comment me how much score you have gathered. This is the quiz for you. You have to understand what you should apply. If there are two spaces, what should be the condition? The first space should be of million. The second space should be of thousand. It means 7,600,000, 600,000 and 500. And next is of fractions. How would you read them? Of course, you can read them easily. 2/3 or 2 out of 3. The easiest one is 2 out of 3, 1 out of 2 and 3 out of 4. But it is half, it is 3/4. 3/4. You can easily say them 2 out of 3, 1 out of 2 and 3 out of 4. Now coming towards the phone numbers, the most important. The first is of country code. Country code 81. Area code 903. Again, there are 4 figures. You have to separate them into 2 and 2. 2 and 2. 40, 13, 17, 30. So this is the lesson of today. Hope you have understood all the numbers, how to read them, whether these are the big numbers, decimals, fractions and dates and years, ordinal numbers, confusing numbers. All your concepts have been made clear by this video. If you like this video, kindly share and subscribe it at least 10 friends of yours so that they can get benefit out of this video. Till the next video, stay happy, stay blessed. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.